Good afternoon. We were discussing how if this was the Titanic, it's going to roll because you all are over here. I'm just going to have to stand this way because nobody made it over here. Well, Peter did. Well, wow, 4 days ago, or almost 4 days ago, we started here together. And how many of you did you see yourself on the slides? Like you saw yourself? There was, as we talked about on Wednesday and on Tuesday evening, coming together to connect, to share. There was so much sharing. The folks on the panel, folks behind the lectern, sharing ideas, the learning, the interchange, the coming together in the hallway conversations that we all saw on there, and the community, just the sense of community. And you can tell that because of the smiles, all the smiles. That was just amazing. So we started this week, as part of the remarks, we noted at least three things. You can't have an event without you putting together the two letters A and I. We talked about workforce development a lot, beyond community and beyond investments in cyber infrastructure. We talked about workforce development and the impact that we want to have on the students. And so if we think about those things, three things, students, workforce development, and AI, I know you're going to enjoy our keynote speaker for today. Dr. Nicol Turner Lee is a senior fellow in governance studies, the director of the Center for Technology Innovation, and co-editor of the Tech Tank blog and podcast at the Brookings Institution, a global think tank headquartered in Washington, D.C. She's also the founder of the AI Equity Lab, which focuses on convening experts from government, civil society, academia, and industry to develop purposeful, pragmatic, and inclusive solutions and policies. Dr. Turner Lee's research encompasses equitable access to technology across the U.S. and abroad. Her portfolio also includes leading research and public policy work focused on the identification and mitigation of online biases in artificial intelligence systems. She is the author of the book, Digitally Invisible: How the Internet is Creating the New Underclass, and has appeared throughout various news media, testified before Congress and international global governance bodies, and written extensively on tech and telecom issues. She's been recognized for her distinguished career contributions by the American Sociological Association, the Washingtonian Magazine, Alliance for Women in Media, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and among others. She has her BA from Colgate University and her PhD from Northwestern University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nicol Turner Lee.
I sat down, right? Thank you. Hey, I can't fix these knees. Thank you, Michael. Well, first and foremost, you all continue to eat. Don't mind me. I just have a few comments to make while you're eating. I'm very excited to be here. It's a pleasure, one, to be with all of you who have really weathered the last few days talking a lot about industry speak. I'm also excited to be here because who passes up a conference in New Orleans, okay? I'm just saying, right? It's always good to be outside of DC, but to be among the company of people who want to actually listen to what I have to say. As Michael said, I'm actually, so for those of you who are probably wondering, I live in Washington, D.C., but I'm also from New York. So if you actually hear some of that accent come out, you've actually solved the puzzle before I spoke, because I have a lot of people who ask me later, where are you actually from? I'm also one who is really excited about this talk because the work that I'm doing at the Brookings Institution really encompasses a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. And it also is really rooted in the research that I've done for the last 30 years. So whenever I get a chance to talk to what I call my people about these issues, it's really important to me because we have a big job ahead of us. Now, before I also speak, Michael mentioned my book, Digitally Invisible: How the Internet is Creating the New Underclass. I like to raffle books. I have a few with me just to tell you, but I have one that I'm going to raffle, but you have to remember something that I said during this talk to be able to get to be the person with the signed copy. So I'm just going to put that out as well. So just remember the things that I say. It's not a test, but you will go with a raffled copy at the end of this. So why am I here today? How many of you in this room have a trademark, patent, copyright on something related to artificial intelligence? Raise your hand. Okay, one person. I just met you in the elevator, too, from Atlanta, Georgia. 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. Now, I'm saying a copyright, patent, or any type of trademark on an AI product. So for the rest of us, out of the 5 people that raised their hand, I would assume that you do not have that. So my mom would tell us when we were growing up, if you are not in the kitchen, you are on the menu. Sit with that for just a second. We are now at a space in innovation where we are technically on the menu of the growing and accelerated pace to which artificial intelligence is changing the way that we live, we learn, and we earn. Now, I'm asking another question. How many of you use AI products? You don't own a copyright, patent, or trademark, but you use them. And just yell out for a moment the AI products that you use. Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, right? I have to tell you this story about Copilot. One day I opened my computer, and Copilot was on my computer. I didn't know where that person came from, who started correcting my sentences and my paragraphs, right? And I can't seem to get Copilot off my computer, right? My point is, like, we're all using these technologies, but yet we're not the people who are at the table who are creating and developing those technologies. We all also, and this is going to be the point of my talk today, we are subjected to the implications of those technologies. For those of you in the campus environment, we know that our students are using these technologies, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. For those of you who are faculty or administrators or working on the staff at your colleges and universities, you know that this is the talk of the town. It's the talk that happens at work, and it's the talk that follows you home. I want to be real clear. I am not going to give you a Debbie Downer speech about artificial intelligence and technology. I've been doing technology policy for 30-plus years of my life. My book started when I was in Chicago as a PhD student, working on technology, and at that time, I'm going to date myself, it was a 386 computer. You know what I'm talking about, right? We weren't talking about the technology that we have today in our purses and our pant pockets. I was talking about 386 computers and something called America Online. Come on with me, those of you who remember. And the modem that made the screeching sound. Today, kids would just hate America Online because they would be found out every time they got online, right, with that screeching sound. My point is, I have been a part of this, like many of you, this technological innovation that is changing the way in which we educate, we learn, we consume, we love. And it's something that we need to talk about, because what I'm going to talk about today is if we don't have these conversations in a crisp, clear way, these technologies are going to change the nature of students and how they even participate in ways that I think HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges will be left behind. So I spent a lot of my time really thinking about how do we level the playing field so that we have equitable access. So you'll hear a lot of that from me. Like I said, I won't be Debbie Downer the entire time, but I want this to raise questions for all of you as you leave with the nuggets from this conference on what you're going to do to take your agency back. Do not be, like my book says, digitally invisible in this space. So I put together some slides because this is what happens when you go out and you eat when you first arrive, and then you sit on your bed and you say, I guess I'll do some slides because I can't do anything else. This was the world before AI. Follow me for a moment. The smiling faces on campus, young people acting engaged, walking on the campus with a big old smile like, I'm so glad to be here. This is what it'll look like later. See those robots in that classroom? You see how they're all just very much homogeneous in terms of just the stature? Now, this, of course, is a very extreme case, but I had to share this because I thought about my own experience with the technology. Anybody remember the Jetsons cartoon? You remember George Jetson was flying around on autonomous vehicles and his wife her ponytail was perfect? I know the young people, it is on Comedy Central. You can find those episodes on a cable station near you. That's if you still have cable. My point is, I don't think I ever imagined that we would be in a world where we're having this conversation today. I was a young girl. I used to run home to watch the Jetsons, Fred Flintstone, and Fat Albert. And now I think about Jetsons, and I think about how much ahead we were in really reimagining and re-envisioning the world. And then I also think about the fact that I don't think any of us in this room thought we'd have to deal with this vision of what a classroom could look like just in the last 3 to 4 years, where AI has become a very, very contentious conversation. I always like to just do some level setting before I go into my talk about AI. And I know I'm among a lot of geniuses in this room who already talk about this, but for those of you who need a little bit of, nomenclature on what I'm actually suggesting and referring to, I usually use this slide. Artificial intelligence is just about everything, my friends. And we talked about that already in terms of the stuff that you're already using. There's also machine learning that is really a big part of what drives artificial intelligence models. Machine learning are those computations that are redundant that allow us to make tasks much more computerized and automated. Things like what you're going to watch on a streaming service. Those recommendations that come on a Saturday night, they said, because you watch this, you might like this. That's AI. When you're actually shopping and AI recommends a white jacket, it's because you've purchased that before. Those machine learning algorithms are usually very predictive. And I think because most of us are in this generative space, which I'll talk about in a moment, we forget that we do have different layers of AI that we're talking about. There's also something called deep learning. Some of you may be more familiar. We're starting to see this a lot with hiring. There are deep learning applications where applicants will submit a video, and there'll be some neural network training to determine the suitability for that person for that job. Now, I told you I'm not going to be Debbie Downer, but what we're actually finding are Black and Hispanic applicants tend to be denied. There was actually a study that just came out about 2 days ago that said AI used in hiring has the most disproportionate impact on Black and Hispanic candidates. Because guess what? Deep learning says they're not giving me eye contact. They didn't smile enough. Their head was tilted. That type of technology, of which I'm quite scared of, is really looking at our emotional neural networks to determine an outcome. Most of you in this room just talked about generative AI. That is that large language model that summarizes everything in the world now. You do a Google search, you get an AI summary. You're on ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the case may be. You get back information. Do all of you know that that data is about 5 years old? It's not current. Generative AI, I use the analogy, I'll use it here because I just had to remind myself of something I said the other day, is like eyes in the back of the head. It's curated information. It's not necessarily information that is fresh. And I didn't put up here, which I should have, agentic AI. How many of you are now dealing with agentic AI? Those are those chat bots that actually remember stuff, but they're so autonomous, they can respond back. I called for an oil change the other day, and I guess an agentic AI bot answered my call. And it said, hello, would you like an appointment in the morning or the afternoon? I said the evening, and then she went silent. Then I had to find a real person. My point is, agentic AI is showing up in education, in retail, in health. Some of your doctors are actually using agentic AI to triage you. What are your symptoms? This bot, someone told me agentic AI is like a bunch of AI bots in trench coats, walking around making decisions while you're sitting there not knowing that you're not talking to a real person. The reason I want to share this is because most of our students are still in the generative AI phase. Wouldn't you agree? Most of them are using generative AI for homework and research. The Pew Research Center actually put out a study and said that most Black and Hispanic students actually use generative AI. They're not scared of it. Now, we'll talk a little bit about how we're governing it, but for the most part, it is something that is highly adaptable by most of the students that we have from K through 20. With that, though, it's important for all of us in this room to understand the different layers because they have different governance points, and they will have different impacts on jobs, which is really what I want to talk about today. We have students, those happy-go-lucky students that I showed, that are using AI, but may not know the disruption that it's going to have on their careers. I'm doing a project right now with Spelman College. So what we did was we asked the students, how do you use AI? Dr. Spence, in her group. And so the girls actually interviewed other girls on campus, and everybody had an AI chatbot or AI tool that they use. And then we asked them this question: will this replace your career or your job in 4 years? And most of those girls did not know. So we have a challenge because this disruption is happening in real time. I know, and Michael and I just talked about it, you might have seen some hype recently from the AI trillion-dollar billionaires, right, who said it's not going as quickly as we thought. Jobs are still here. Well, what they were really trying to tell you is that janitors, plumbers, and other blue-collar jobs will not be replaced because you still need people to come into your home and interact with you. But what Boston Consulting Group is telling us, and just read these, 10 to 15% of jobs can be eliminated by 2031. This is from a recent report that just came out last week. Anthropic CEO suggested that AI could wipe out half of the entry-level white-collar jobs, pushing double-digit unemployment. This is the CEO. One other stat is that AI is poised to not just change careers, but the task, the things that kids learn, students learn while in school. This is a really important conversation that we need to have here today. Are we preparing young people to be resilient and flexible in a changing AI world? Come on with me for 1 minute. I know I sound like a Baptist preacher, but I'm going to sound like it. I just promise I will not pass a collection plate. How many of you have thought about this question of the survival and resilience of your students in an AI world? Raise your hand if you think about that. All of our hands should be raised. We all should be thinking about that. What does that look like when we have students who use and consume these products that essentially could change the way in which they work and they learn? And the other reason I'm really, really interested in this topic, let me show you this stat. 6% of recent college graduates are unable to find work. They're not getting the work that they need. I can personally attest to that. I have a freshman in college, one who just recently graduated. It was a long lapse in time for them to actually be employed. And this is not the employment that maybe most of us in this room heard from our parents. Girl, you better go get a job somewhere. I don't care where it is. I did have my job at Burger King and McDonald's. It was okay. But these recent college graduates are finding a job market that is not allowing them. If you look at the stats, about 6% of recent college graduates are not finding work. And disproportionately, that impacts Black, Latina, and tribal students. It's not just AI that's going to be a problem, folks. It's not just AI. But the changing nature of work is going to make this statistic look different, I would suggest, in about 4 years. And I really believe that we are at an inflection point where we get to have the conversation on what it means to be prepared for this shift. You know, I speak to a lot of HBCUs just generally, and I was just at a caucus summit in Atlanta, and we all realize that we have been preparing our students for jobs that are essentially the ones that are the most accessible by AI. Come with me for just a minute. Pre-law, paralegals are now being adopted. AI is being adopted in law firms to do research prior to a student getting their law degree. Customer service, we're now having agentic AI come in and fill some of those roles that traditionally our young people would have been finding their way as a trajectory towards business. Anything with a pre in it, I feel, is a vulnerable occupation for young people. Education. In Austin, Texas, they are now starting schools that are led by robots and no teachers. You know, the stat that I talked about in terms of jobs that are most secure are in healthcare, blue collar, things that are one-on-one human capacity is needed to be able to exercise that job. It is incumbent upon us to make sure our young people are ready. This is our job in the AI space. Yeah, we can geek out about all the new technology. Yes, we can use all the generative AI tools in the world. But if we're not thinking about what is my school doing What is my school system doing to ensure that young people do not get left behind? We got another thing coming. This almost reminds me of the pandemic. Anybody remember the pandemic when we sent young people home and we found out that they didn't have computer access and broadband to even tap into school? This could potentially be worse than that. And think about the learning loss that we experienced when we were trying to find ways to get kids online. Friends, as my mama would say, this is grown-up conversation right now, right? AI should be pushing us to have very discrete conversations on how we are going to make this better. Why? Because they are looking to us to be responsible. So a lot of times in DC, I spend a lot of time on conversations on ethical, responsible, inclusive AI, but I'm gonna actually change the word responsible to this notion I think you've been talking about all week, is how do we exercise our responsibility to minority-serving institutions to make sure we get ahead of the game? Listen, I did this number and it never ceases to amaze me. 107 HBCUs, 645 HSIs, 37 tribal colleges. In HBCUs alone, 290,000 students receiving and graduating annually, enrolled. When I think about just HBCUs and I think about the level of graduates and a significant share in the workforce that we see HBCU students, for example, actually attain, we have no other choice but to have this conversation today. When you think about AI, do not believe the hype that it can be disruptive, but we have time. I just pulled this from an MIT article just the other day. AI could be disruptive, but the data is telling us right now the disruption is not here, and we have time to plan? I don't think so. I like it. Some people are shaking your head with me. We do not have that time to plan. So I want you to sit back for just a moment. And then I'm going to open it up for questions, because I told Shannon and Lanika, I want you to talk to me. Let's think about what we're doing in our respective colleges and universities to tackle this. First and foremost, let me do a check-in. Am I by myself, or there's some of you with me right now? I know y'all eating, but y'all can talk a little louder. Thank you so much. I just hit an amen. Thank you. Listen, this is one of the pivotal areas, and this is the pivotal space to have this conversation. So let's think about it. What do we do to make sure our students are well prepared to be resilient and flexible in an AI space? You know, one of the things that came of our Spelman study, I have to share this with the young lady that's at the front. So all the young lady were naming their chatbots men. And I was like, why are you naming your chatbots men? And they were like, Dr. Lee, there's a lot of bias in AI too. We got to make sure that we appear to be a 23-year-old white guy applying for the same job. Fascinating to me, right? Because what it's suggesting to me again is that young people understand the power of this tool, even though they don't design it. But what we're also finding in that study is that young people are also perturbed about AI when it comes to data centers and the environmental impact. Anybody in here hear your students say, I don't want to use AI because it's going to hurt the environment? That's the newest way for young people to get out of doing their assignments right now, right? They just tell you that AI is bad and they're not going to use it. My point is, we are at this crossroad. So first and foremost, how do we develop a plan for student resilience? First, we got to do a reality check. The elephant in the room is that young people aren't getting employed. So let's start there. AI is not necessarily going to help that, and it's not going to stop it. This is a bigger policy issue. And this organization has to be at the table in those policy discussions on how we're going to make college more affordable, how we're going to reel in student debt, and how we're going to ensure that young people have job opportunities when they leave your institutions. Point blank, period, mic drop, I could stop there. It is imperative that we solve this issue right now. Young people coming out with higher digit unemployment, about 6% compared to everybody else who have invested money in their college education, only means that we will have a virtuous cycle of young people also falling more in debt and not able to develop the wealth that comes with education. I'm a person who pursued a PhD largely because it was free to me at the time. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm pretty old, but they were giving out free money at that time, and I'm very grateful for that. But I also have a young person who's getting a master's at a college, and I'm paying a lot of money, even though he told me he was going to be off my payroll. My point is, this is the elephant in the room, And I want us to be clear that AI will not help or hurt that. It's just going to be another part of that appendage for how we solve this issue of AI use in our colleges and universities. But it does mean that we can have 3 points of focus. The first focus we actually have to put our eyes on is the governance and the use of AI. How many of you in this room have policies on AI use for students? Raise your hand if you have a policy at their college or university on AI use for students. How many students know what those policies are? He kind of put his hand halfway up, right? How many of you in your policy are really looking at the punitive side of AI? You're really trying to stop students from cheating. Just raise your hand. Most colleges and universities are. They basically have their policy because they're afraid of all the implications of the negative stuff of AI, the loss of learning, the loss of information. I mean, these are real. I heard this word the other day called cognitive feeblement. We're just making up words now in terms of AI based on what young people are not getting. What I would suggest to all of you, turn the table the other way. Instead of building governance for AI that's based on kids cheating, build governance that's based on how do you make the trade-offs of use of technology in a way that benefits the student community. What do I mean by that? I listened to disco when I was growing up. It didn't kill me. Oh, come on now. I know that there's some of you who know what I'm talking about. My mother was a Christian woman. We could not listen to anything outside of what she had on the radio on Sunday morning. Amen. Hello, but it didn't kill me to listen to a little bit of disco and house music in New York. Exactly. Innovation is my point. And we, as people who are ushering this age of AI, we have to govern from the standpoint of asset versus deficit. And I say this all the time to higher education, get a crew together that's actually going to look at how do we integrate AI in a way that is responsible, transparent, and it also lends to occupational alignment. What do I mean by that? Your students are going to go into offices where AI is used. Companies now are doing everything via AI. And if you do not prepare your students for that, they're going to go into jobs afraid to use it. I kind of have been suggesting that we need to do K through 20 AI literacy. It has to start when young people are young, and it needs to follow them into college. You need to be teaching in your governance policies, or in your governance policies, have healthy consideration for the use of AI. Some of you may not want to hear this because maybe you're part of that crew that thinks all technology should be taken away from students. But I'm here to tell you, we cannot stop that train. That train has left the station. Young people are using it, but guess what? We do not have governance policies to actually give them rules of the road of healthy use. If your school has not thought about how are we looking at AI when it comes to classroom, I do a lot of adjunct teaching. I let my students know this is an assignment where you can use AI. This is one where I prefer that you use your creative brainstorm. These are some of the norms that we have to start putting into the conversation. And colleges and universities, particularly HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges, should not be the ones who are last online to come up with a governance policy, because you need your kids to be as competitive as everyone else. Faculty professional development. How many of you have professional development or training for other faculty on AI use? Just a handful. You should be thinking about what do people need to know so they can be more effective at its use. And then finally, some of us in this room know that there's a connection between college and the workforce. How many of us even ask the workforce what are some of the tools that they're actually advancing to ensure that our students are prepared? If you look at some of the studies, not all industry sectors are going to be infiltrated with AI. You may not have to do it for health or pre-med. You may not have an important role of AI, in something else that's much more tactile. But when you start to talk about pre-law, we should be talking to law firms. What is it that you expect of my students? What research skills should they be using that entails AI? Sometimes I feel when I'm talking, I'm up here by myself. Some of these are common sense questions, but guess what? We have all been placed in a situation where this is moving so fast that we've lost agency and the ability to interrogate and to add to this existing debate. And then finally, I would like to say this. We also have to plan for biases. I was going back and forth as to whether or not I wanted to include this. But I think for all of you in this room, like I said, my people, it's important for us to understand that AI comes with a set of biases. It starts at the design of the model, it's embedded in the training data, and then it shows up in how that response looks. Why is that important? We are in the position of keeping our students safe. And what that means is when we procure AI, we should know what data is this trained on. How do I interrogate instances where all of a sudden it looks like it's disproportionately impacting certain types of students? How do I ensure that the person who made this understands the lived experiences of my professional career and the people around me? I can't tell you how many times in my lab we find AI that's built for education where there are no educators in the room. Or we have AI that's built for healthcare, and guess what? There are no oncologists or primary care specialists. You have to have a role in this. Friends, for us to do this right, it has to be culturally responsive. So, I think about it this way as I wrap up. My dad was an HBCU alum, Howard University School of Architecture. Also Omega Psi Phi Alpha Chapter for anyone who might be interested. Very steeply trenched in the Black college experience. And I remember as an architectural student, he used to draw all his drawings. He took the time to have the precision of the line. He knew the experience that he wanted in terms of what he was trying to convey to his customer. And then this thing called CAD came. Remember CAD? And I remember my dad struggling. He was like, this computer thing has come, and now I can't draw because it wants me to do everything automated. Now the clients want me to send every drawing and rendering via CAD because they want to be able to provide comments. And then next thing you know, I saw my dad, a brilliant architect. He passed away 7 years, bless his soul. One that could draw with the precision of his hand, be challenged by the introduction of technology and the expectations of what the industry wanted from architects. And I saw a man whose confidence shattered until one day he sat at that computer for, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks, and he learned it himself to be able to be competitive. That is an example of something that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Friends, I just end with you. We don't have 10 or 20 years to make sure our young people know how to come into this age. It requires an urgency of now. And it's one in which you cannot continue to let industry dictate the way in which you actually implement learning among students who rely upon each and every one of us to make sure that they're the first to go to college, the second to be in that career, the third to change the trajectory of their family. You have a responsibility to understand this technology, but to also do something about it so that our students are resilient. It's my intention in that project with Spelman, and I think now Tennessee State, and then we're looking at Clark Atlanta, is for us to begin to think about ways in which we develop the resiliency of our students so that they're no longer left behind. We cannot afford that in this time where AI has changed fundamentally everything that we're doing in our society. So just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep your side eye on your AI. And make sure the stuff that you're doing at home, you're bringing into your faculty rooms and suggesting new ways to innovate and do things differently. But don't be afraid of it. The train has left the station, but you still have agency. Thank you so much. Now, Shannon, I don't know if I have time for questions. I was in that moment. Oh, okay, I do have a couple time for questions. I was trying to watch a timer. I asked Jenny to help me. See, AI cannot stop me from talking. That's the problem. I have tried. Let's do some questions. Yep, come on up. And I think that there are microphones. If there are microphones. But I'd love for you all to ask questions. There's a microphone here and a microphone here. Let's ask some questions before we wrap up and get you on an airplane and on your way. Okay, we'll start here and then we'll go over here. Okay.
Very, very great talk, and I appreciate everything that was just spoken here in the room today. One of the things I want to put to you into the room is that we know minority experiences in universities is just different. With this AI and faculty and student and just the mix of all the things there, the understanding of the student is significantly lowered compared to their reality. They go to these schools, they are taught from K to 12 on reading, writing, arithmetic, as they used to say. And they are taught grammatical, sentence structure, things of this nature. So they come out speaking intelligently. They come out with the skills to write creatively, scientifically, academically. However, when they're using these technologies, using these AI tools to fact check their structure, they're receiving the feedback, and I've heard this from students. I've seen this happen with staff members, that their entire work was AI generated.
Yep, yep.
So it's more than just the tools replacing them. It's the fear that the student's cognitive ability has been lessened. And that is typically not the case. These students are taught how to read and write appropriately for the manner in which they're submitting. How do we get the instructors, the faculty, the staff to understand that a student's cognitive ability is not that they have perceived it to be?
That's right, that's right. So that's like a question, that's like the $100,000 question, right, that everybody is dealing with, which is how do you get AI usage in a way that it's not actually deterring or regressing these behaviors, you know? So there's two examples that I give, right? One, if you remember, when people stopped learning the Dewey Decimal System, they had to learn how to sort of cite to the internet, right? So I give people an example. Now, the reason young people learn that is because faculty taught them. And faculty gave them some instruction. This is how you do an internet citation. I think later the citation, the Blue Book, gave you the right citations for the web. Somehow we sort of leapfrogged with the AI piece. And what we're seeing, and this is something that I think plays out very disproportionately when it's very unequitable. There are some K through 12 schools that actually teach really good AI literacy. My daughter was in Fairfax County public schools. They taught them when she was in high school to be able to use AI tools to validate your work. She had to run it through an AI checker, and she really like pulled out probably every single braid in her hair because she was like, this says it's more than 25%, Ma, you know, and she's like, I know it wasn't that, but she learned certain protocols and tools. I think what happens when kids get to college, there is some inconsistency of their exposure to AI based on maybe where they live, how much access to the internet they have is another big factor. Then they come into college, and these tools are enticing because everybody else is using them. So we have this challenge, right? Because this is very much used by college students, but to your point, but they're not necessarily used in a way that's contributing to their learning. And we're finding that out. Anybody use Blue Books anymore, right? Young people, there's a really great stat of a study, one of our fellows at Brookings, she's a computer science teacher. She said freshmen and sophomores are using so much AI that they have the competency of juniors and seniors. So by the time they do the junior and senior exams by Blue Book, they can't answer the questions because AI has helped them along the way. So for me, that's why I said schools have to have governance. You know what I mean? You have to start with a conversation that you are going to have kids enter your schools, your colleges at varying levels of degree of proficiency. There should be an AI 101 class in your college and university that is not necessarily elective, but is like your general seminar. Or it should be integrated into some kind of research project that they're doing. I'm working with Northwestern University where they're starting to think about for their master's students, should they have sort of a seminar on appropriate AI use in graduate research. That's why I say to all of you, you gotta join us in this conversation. Because right now, the people who are leading the conversation that you're talking about are not learning sciences people, they're not educators, they're not faculty, they're people who are just making these tools available, and they're not giving any guidance to the students on how to use it. So I might sound like I'm defending our students for the most part because I think they've come into environments without any protocols, you know, essentially. And as a result of what you said, this cognitive decline is real. But, you know, I just have to share this. Like, I watched some students the other day in high school. They were doing a competition in DC. One group was from Moss Point, Mississippi. And they actually used AI to do water testing of the fisheries. Then there was a group from West Virginia, and they used AI as part of their project to help with the toxicity from abandoned coal mines. And then there was another student who was using AI to help with RNA screening for cancer. So I was really impressed, right? Because I'm like, these kids are actually using AI in a way that I think all of us as faculty should be pointing young people to. But they were elementary to high school. They were high school students. So they'll go into college very different in terms of their AI understanding and use than the kids that you're talking about. So again, I blame us. I'm not gonna sit there and lie about it. I think we missed the ball with really coming out with the right guidance, which is why I'm telling all of you, take your agency back. Because I think most of us, come on, let's be clear. We're like, oh, that's a new product that can help me with X. I'll take it, I'll learn it, I'll use it. And we don't really think about how that actually goes into pedagogy, which is your conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So sorry for the long, it's just like, for me, it's like I'm conflicted every day. Like I'm always conflicted about this because I want to make sure that, particularly for kids coming from HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges, that we're not saying to them, you cannot use AI. And then there's a workforce that does use it. So we have to figure out what's the balance and then what's the appropriate structure to make sure we normalize it in a way that we don't lose the cognitive progression.
Because they're hearing at their campuses that whatever you submitted is AI and not their own work. And so that tends to discourage enrollment. And so campuses will end up losing enrollment. They'll lose funding because they don't have enough seats in the classroom.
That's right.
And the students get disheartened and the innovation stops.
That's right.
Which defeats the purpose of classical education.
Yeah, and it's also one, I mean, I get to talk about this with all of you because of where you sit. It's also one that actually shows out inequitably too, right? I can't tell you how many conferences I've been at and schools that are in under-resourced neighborhoods or predominantly Black and Latino, they're the first to be told that they're cheating. And I've had to sort of counter those narratives because, again, the Pew Research study, which you all should look up, just came out in April, suggests that our students actually use AI at a higher degree than any other student. For research, not for mental chatbots, but for research. Okay. Another question, you, come on over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. And so I'm TRS 80.
Okay.
So I'm like your dad, you know. Back in those days when we were.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but, and you know, my dissertation was on generations. Thank young people here. And I was surprised to find that what is coming through right now is that they are going to reinvent our society. I have 5 children, so they're really showing me that, yeah, I don't really need to hear what you know. I'm going to reinvent it the way I'm going to. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But what social consciousness and social responsibility is what we have to readdress. You know, as technologists, we build it and they will adopt it, right? And to be honest, it's disheartening to me to hear we are following the technology. And you talk about it a lot. Because as fast as we follow that technology, but of course our young, you know, you guys are going to be okay. You'll be fine. I got grandchildren and they're adopting, right? My baby grandchildren adopting. But as we follow this technology, what is our society going to become? That's the question. Mm-hmm. Is this what we want? And again, is the conversation. This is okay. As we abstract from the technology, it's okay and useful to us, or no. Mm-hmm. We want to be not, we want to have that robotic in our environment, but we are directing it because it needs to be directed, right? So I think as academia, we have the social responsibility to direct it, to govern it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a cybersecurity PhD, and we designed the industry into academia, and we'll continue to do that because our role as academians are to do the high level of education. And as you said, AI, we have to do that, and we have to do it with our young people as well because again, this is their world.
That's right. That's right.
So that's
you know, and what I would say to all of you, because I'm standing between some of you and your flights. Listen, at the end of the day, and somebody brought this up, and there's actually some research that's coming out now. I'm working on my second book around this as well. I mean, it's no secret right now that we're seeing a lot of resistance, data center resistance, parents not wanting technology, higher education saying no tech. I mean, people are starting to actually find their identity in this space. And I think that's actually going to continue. And like I said with Disco, we eventually, with any innovation, we find our way into how it works best with humans and how humans can help co-create that. The other thing about resiliency, I think, for our students is that we also have to remember that just because generative AI is a task or a tool that you should know, what distinguishes you is still your human creativity. And so you as academicians are also going to start to hear more conversations about human creativity. It's becoming a big, tilt in terms of what people want to talk about when it comes to AI, which is kind of like, again, a close, sort of like this central apex of like where we all are at. I remember one time I was on a panel, and there was the HBCU president, and we were talking about just smartphones, and he said, I'll never let a smartphone in my classroom. And at that time, I was like, well, why not? Because some kids don't have a Texas Instrument calculator. They may not have access to a computer. This might be the only way that they could actually get access. And he said, because I don't think they should have that as a distraction. And I commonly tell people, yeah, it is a distraction, but it's a distraction that when they get out of college, their employer is going to be looking to know if they can use it. And it's very much the same type of distraction that we experienced when we went from, I did customer service on a Wayne computer, and then I had to learn how to use an IBM computer, then I had to use this, right? It's part of that same cycle of innovation. I'm not suggesting that anybody in here has to follow all that stuff, but you have to be able to bring the type of AI literacy that people know where they fit in the space, but they also keep their creative distinction in the workplace. What do I mean by that? It won't be just tech that people are looking for. They'll be looking for interpersonal skills. They'll be looking for their ability to manage across laterally versus, in these boxes. They'll be looking for people who are flexible enough to do a couple of things. I know people, they'll be looking for people probably don't know how to use generative AI in a few years because everybody else will keep using it. And we will all start to look the same in the workforce, much like those robots in the classroom. So I would just say this, continue being yourself. I'm sure your 5 kids are fine. Mine, not so much. They still get on my nerves, so I'd like to know what you're doing. But what I'm saying is, just keep doing what you all do. So now, wait, before we end, because Shannon said I gotta stop, right, Shannon? I gotta stop. I did say I would raffle off a book. I have a few books with me if you find me afterwards, but I have to remember what I said for one person to get it. So, I'm going to ask you, Jenny, to help me because I don't do a good job of finding the right hand that goes up first. You got to put your hand up first. Don't yell it out because you will not qualify. Where did I grow up?
Right there in the corner.
All right, you get the book. Oh, that was an easy one. I got one more. I got another book. I'll raffle it off. What school did I do my PhD?
You got the answer or no? Northwestern?
Yes. All right, I got 2 books. Thank you, everybody. Please stay in touch with me. This is a really important topic, and I appreciate the organization for having me as a keynote. I'll be around for just a minute. Thank you.
Internship for the summer, they're arriving at Fisk University today to begin their internship, to have that impact, and I'm certain that AI is in that curriculum. We also have partners across the landscape of research and education that work with us, and these are photos. We talked about the hackathons on Wednesday. These are photos of the hackathons that we've previously done, and one of those partners, I've talked to a number of you this week about wanting to partner, about the way you can contribute, whether that's hosting an event or partnering in some other way. And one of those partners that we didn't acknowledge on Wednesday is the Rosen Center for Advanced Computing out of Purdue. And they have supported these hackathons for the last several years. And so we want to show our appreciation to them for doing that for our students. So if you'll acknowledge that. Oop. Perhaps you saw the poster boards out there about what does MSCC mean to you, or what does it mean to me? And we can tell, the staff can tell the story. We can talk about what we want to do. We can talk about the sessions we had. But the best voice to build this community is your voice. And so if you haven't already, scan that barcode, or it's out there on the poster board. Do that. And it's not a barcode, it's a QR code. Am I showing my age? Scan that QR code and go out there, and even if it's just a few words, even if it's one word, tell us what the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium means to you, or means to your students, or means to your work. A couple of the housekeeping things. This is the fine print where they read it really fast at the end of the advertisement. There's always questions about the Uber vouchers for your travel. You'll get an email about those. Lanika wanted to make sure. She's happy to answer those questions now, but stay tuned. You'll get an email about those. And then if you haven't already, if there's a session that you really hated, if there's a session that you really liked, go out and rate that. Give us that feedback. It also gives us an indication of which sessions were most meaningful to you, because generally people respond and rate the sessions, even if it's a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5. They're doing that with the sessions that meant the most to them, that left the most impact. So please take care of doing that. And then finally, we started again Tuesday night, and on Wednesday we looked at slides, and on those slides we talked about there's 250 plus people here from 58 institutions. We're here for 4 days, and we're one community that is here to make an impact. Thank you for all of that, and I really look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks so much. Have safe travels.